in these discourses, now I'm going to talk about the CSR law. In common language, it calls CSR law. Basically, the Companies Act 2013. As I mentioned in my earlier discussion, that in around 2001-2, Government of India formed the Parliament Committee to look into the CSR and Companies Act, basically how it to be. It has basically culminated in 2013. In my understanding and little knowledge, this is one of the long-standing Parliament Committee that delivered the Act more than a decade. It was almost 11-12 years that taken a shape. 18th December 2012 at 5:30, the Companies Bill mooted in Lok Sabha, and around 11:30 at night, the entire discussions and the conclusive part happened. The bill unanimously supported by almost all political parties. During that 5 hours discussion, nearly 3 hours, people discussed about the CSR. Just mind it, in Companies Bill, there were several nuances, there are several chapters, there are several aspects, but most of the honorable parliamentarian and the knowledgeable people there choose to discuss the component which would going to shape India's major aspect of the business law. Specifically, Section 135 and Schedule 7 of the Act provides the CSR compliance along with the Companies Rules 2014. India is the leading country, and in my belief, it is the only country in the world having CSR as mandatory law. So, the provisions and the analysis thereof has been provided in a very lucid canvas. The effective date of the law, it is 1st April 2014. The Companies Act 2013 received the assent of President of India on 29th August 2013. And the law says about three types of companies can be under the ambit of CSR. First is, the company's net worth should have rupees 500 crore or more. Second is, the turnover of the company should be rupees 1000 crore or more. And the last point, it is said that net profit of a company should have 5 crore or more. So in these 3 areas, company comes under CSR. The 2% net profit shall be determined as per the financial statements of the company, computed under the provisions of Companies Act. The net profit for the purpose of determining CSR contribution shall not include dividend received from other companies which are also covered under CSR provisions, income received from overseas foreign branches or subsidiaries. Surplus generated from CSR activities should be plowed back to CSR funds over and above the 2% contribution. Here it is not clear how the taxation of such surplus will be treated. CSR committee should be included one independent director. But there are 3 provisions I am going to talk to you about, that everybody should not have the independent director. An unlisted public company or a private company covered under subsection 1 of section 135 is not required to appoint an independent director. A private company having only 2 directors in its board shall constitute its CSR committee with 2 such directors. With respect to a foreign company covered under these rules, the CSR committee shall comprise of at least 2 persons. The CSR committee shall institute a transparent monitoring mechanism of re-implementation of CSR projects or activities or programs undertaken by company. Further, the role of CSR committee shall include formulate the CSR policy and recommend to the board. See, the board is the main or the supreme entity so far as CSR interventions are concerned. The committees are basically a recommending body. Prepare strategic plans and implementation schedule for CSR expenditure. Monitor the implementation of CSR projects or program or activities undertaken by the company, and ensure that the surplus, if any, generated from CSR activities are plowed back to CSR funds over and above the 2% contribution. Here I am just going to talk about what then board is going to do. The board of the company will be legally accountable for the CSR activities and shall have an oversight function over the CSR committee. Further, the role of the board shall include to constitute the CSR committee. Board basically constitute the CSR committee to approve the CSR policy, to keep oversight control of the CSR activities, to ensure legal compliance of at least 2% spending, the report of CSR activities, disclose the reasons for non-compliance or underspending, if any, under section 134(3)(0) specifying the reasons for not spending. Ensure that CSR activities and compliance are uploaded on the official website of the company. That's very, very important. It may noted that CSR expenditure is subject to following conditions. The CSR activities have to be confined to the activities described in the Schedule 7 of the Act. Here, the Schedule 7 of the Act are almost synonymous. What I talked about, the SDGs goal. One area here it is mentioned that there are certain discretionary power to the board. They can choose any specific project related to their area of choice, related to the constituency they will operate, and related to the condition they may fit or fill for. The expenditure on employees shall not be permissible unless it is up to 5% of capacity building partnering to CSR. Further, up to 5% of the capacity building program to CSR shall also be permissible for the implementing NGOs or the external organizations. The board of company shall prepare a CSR report under section 134(3) of the companies. A brief outline of the company's CSR policy include overview of the projects or programs proposed to be undertaken and reference to the web link to the CSR policy and projects or programs. It is really important so far as transparency of the entire activities or entire program is concerned. The constitution of the CSR committees should also be mentioned here. Prescribed CSR expenditure, detail of CSR spent during the financial year, and total amount to be spent for the financial year which is projected. Amount unspent, if any. In case of company has failed to spend the 2% of the average net profit of the last 3 financial years or any part of thereof, the company shall provide the reason for not spending the amount in its board report. A responsibility statement of CSR committees that the implementation of monitoring of CSR policy is in compliance with CSR objectives and policy of the company. So anybody just whimsically cannot opt or cannot delete certain aspects of CSR intervention. It should be linked with the policy and the committee's reference and the board disclosure. Here another interesting thing is also mentioned, that collaboration with other corporates. Under Rule 4.3 of the company may also collaborate with other companies of undertaking projects or programs or CSR activities in such manner that CSR committees of respective companies are in a position to report separately on such projects or programs in accordance with the rules. The modalities of such joint execution have not been explained in the Act or the rules. When a law talks about the financial implications, the transparency, its activity to be linked with the web, the board formations, and so many other provisions, it is also very important that who to be rewarded and who to be punished. Penalty for non-compliance of CSR provision is very clear. Imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years, or with fine which shall not be less than 50,000 rupees but which shall extend to 5 lakh rupees or both. So this is one of the very important point. The contravention is continuing one, and this contravention continues with the spirit of the law and with the spirit of its thrusting point. Here what I just put a brief summary about the CSR law, about its operation, about the board, about the committee, about also the provisions of punishment. Therefore, it is very serious in nature, and the business stakeholder undoubtedly make it a great point in the future discourses. Presently, in India, around 16,000 companies under the ambit of CSR, and a great opportunity for the youth, a great opportunity not only for the jobs, but for social venture, but for other areas of social engagement, communities' acceptance to a company, vice versa, and people's acceptance to all these 3 areas of the parameters in a society. CSR is going to be emulated by the other countries in near future.